Hi, everybody. This is your announcement for History 202 for the week of April 13th. I hope everyone's doing well. Today is a holiday. I record this announcement on Sundays, so whatever you're doing, I hope you're enjoying your day at home. First of all, I graded your papers, the critical mission atomic bomb papers, last week, and I think I realized that this is kind of a challenging assignment for students, and I think what's challenging is using those primary source documents that I had you look at, and in some ways I almost regret giving you the website, the Atomic Diplomacy website, because then the website was written, looking back at that time period, and so some of you kind of adopted that same kind of tone and wrote as though you were looking back, and so I think that confused you. So I'm going to rethink a few things about that assignment. One thing I wanted to bring up about the assignment that many students had, I had concerns about, was how quotations were used in the assignment. So in the assignment, I asked you to write about the pros and the cons so that President Truman could make his decision as to whether or not to use the atomic bomb against Japan. And I think for some of you, you used those quotations as substitutes for your own words, for your own analysis. And I'm not saying you plagiarize necessarily, but that what I didn't get was your thoughts. Okay, and so what you use the quotations for is to support what you want to say in the paper, as opposed to just using those quotations as sentences in your paper. Okay, so that's something to think about. And I think I also noticed that in your discussion, and maybe I'm late to the game here, but in your discussions, try not to just use quotations from the textbook as your statement that you want to make in your discussion, but rather talk to me. Okay, and then use examples from the textbook to support what you're saying in response to the questions that I ask. All right, so just something more to think about. And I try to write comments, so I hope that you're reading the comments that I write when I grade everything that you do for this class, whether it's discussions or the paper. Okay, so we move on to a new module. So I'm going to minimize myself here. So here we are. We are now starting Module 5. Okay, and Module 5 deals with the Civil Rights Movement and goes all the way to the Reagan Revolution and beyond. Okay, so this goes from 1960 all the way to 1992. All right, so here is your overview and objectives for the entire module. And so this is a picture that is from a time period that we are going to study this week on the Civil Rights Movement. This is from the Memphis Sanitation Worker Strike from 1968, and you're going to learn more about that this week. Okay, so our module objectives and now we're in Module 5.1, are to identify key figures and basic events of the modern civil rights movement and the Vietnam War in a self-check quiz, and then to discuss and evaluate the legacy of the civil rights movement in a discussion. Okay, so this is an interesting time period. Now we've got into the point of time where I remember stuff from this. Like I said last time, I was born in 1964. And it's kind of interesting when you actually study a time period that you lived through. And as you get older, you're going to kind of see what I mean. So the time period we're going to look at is was very turbulent in a lot of ways, especially in terms of, two major historical events, the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War, which lasted through the 1960s and into the 1970s. So it's interesting, and I think the Vietnam War was a war that really divided the United States in many ways, and we'll talk more about that. Okay, so I'm going to hit my next button and go to Module 5.1. So this is what we'll be doing this week, Module 5.1. So this is a picture from the Civil Rights Movement. This was common practice against civil rights activists. Police officers had these police dogs that they would allow to attack the civil rights workers. There's a video commentary. Please watch it. A lot of what I talk about in the commentary is not in your textbook. And I already read you your objectives. So for your reading, and it's really important, and you might say, why am I saying this if it's obvious? But it's really important that you read the textbook, okay? Because I get the sense that some of you are not reading the chapters in the textbook, and I'll tell you why it's important. Not just because it's required, but because reading the textbook gives you context, okay? It tells you what's going on in the time period. So, if you try to answer questions without having done that reading, you lose that. You lose that context. You don't really know what was going on during, the entirety of that time period. Okay? So, in addition to chapters 36, 37, and 38 in your textbook, you're also going to watch a video. Okay? And so this video is called Voices of Civil Rights. And I have a link to it here. It's on YouTube. It's about 44 minutes long. And I really, really like this video because it's a series of first-hand accounts, like oral histories, from people who lived through the time of segregation and the Civil Rights Movement. And I think you're really going to enjoy that. Some of the stories are very hard to hear, but it's real. Okay, and this is what actually happened during this time. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. All right, there's your self-check quiz. So your self-check quiz will be due on April 14th. Okay, and then the discussion. All right, always read the instructions. Okay, and please post your responses to 2 classmates. And then the actual discussion is here. And so the discussion is going to be based on the video, Voices of Civil Rights. So even though the discussion is based on the video, reading the textbook is critical to that so that you have the context of what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions about the video, and, please write, at least a paragraph for each of the questions. Okay, give me good, meaningful answers and meaningful responses to your classmates as well. Okay? All right, so that is what is going on for this week in our class. Lots of news happening right now regarding, of course, the pandemic. That continues, and we continue to stay home to be safe, and it's going to be interesting now to see what happens next, because officials are talking about that maybe some cities are reaching kind of the apex, the worst part of the epidemic, and maybe we'll be on the other side. I have heard here in New Mexico that we will not reach that until the end of the month. So what's interesting is to see how government and society responds to that. And for history, how will this be remembered? So that's a question. How do you think this time period is going to be remembered by history, 20 years, 30 years down the road? So I'll ask you to comment about that in the comments below my video. Okay, I hope you all have a good week, and I hope your other classes are going well. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Please reach out, okay? If you're having problems or you need some clarification or just want to talk about, the video or the chapters in the textbook, reach out to me either by email or in my office hours, okay? And I am happy to talk to you. All right, thanks for watching. See you next time.